All right, today we're going to break down a common misunderstanding of RevOps, what it is, how to frame its function in a business. So most people think that RevOps is just this mashup of marketing ops, sales ops, success ops, but that's wrong. In this video, we're going to break down exactly what each function owns, why they're not enough on their own, and how RevOps creates value as its own strategic discipline. So we're going to cover the limits of siloed ops teams, the AIR framework, the AIR framework, which is architecture, instrumentation, and revenue ownership. And then also why RevOps is the operating system for modern go-to-market. We're also going to look at a couple practical examples from real-world RevOps execution and how RevOps connects go-to-market GTM execution to actual financial performance. So if you're building RevOps or trying to explain it to your team, this will help. So post your playbook or your biggest constraints, because I want to as a community kind of build the best practices for what RevOps is together, because I've always benefited most from hearing other people in RevOps explain how they do what they do and why they do it. And so that's what I'd like this community and this forum to be. So again, in this video, we're going to kind of clarify what RevOps actually is and what it isn't. It often gets described as this mix of marketing ops, sales ops, and customer success ops, but that's not exactly quite right, okay? So RevOps is a different kind of function entirely. And until you understand how it works, it's hard to scale it or staff it correctly. It very often gets relegated to a purely administrative function that just catches all of the junk drawer items from all these different teams. So we're going to walk through what each of those traditional operations roles actually owns, why they're not quite enough on their own, and how RevOps creates value as a discipline on its own. So let's start by setting the scene, okay? Let's set the scene at your company, right? If your company's like most companies, then like at many companies, marketing is generating thousands of leads or lots of leads, right? And sales, what? Does not trust those leads. Right? They say the leads are unqualified. Meanwhile, customer success is fielding questions from customers who aren't sure what they actually bought. And they're looking at sales, right? Sales is looking at marketing, customer success is looking at sales. And on the surface, it looks like each of them is doing its job, because each of them is reporting to a boss, and that boss is reporting to an executive team. And they're all saying, yeah, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But all the teams aren't functioning cross-functionally. You hear this buzzword all the time, cross-functional teams, right? Well, each team can be succeeding on its own, while the collective organization can be failing due to a lack of a cross-functional performance, right? This is very common. So marketing ops is focused on those leads, right? They measure lead volume, cost per lead, marketing qualified leads, actual benchmarks for lead quality, right? And their job is to build that top of funnel using marketing automation, analytics, PR, brand design, partnerships, campaign infrastructure, right? Lots of different tools in their tool belt. Sales ops, in contrast to marketing ops, sales ops takes those leads and focuses on conversion, right? They're measured on close rates, deal velocity, average contract value, right? They manage more tactical aspects of CRM structure, like pipeline accuracy, forecasting, enablement tools, right? And then once the deal closes, SuccessOps steps in, right? And their focus is retention and upselling, depending on the product and the organization, right? But most SuccessOps teams track the same thing. They track churn, right? Which is how many of our what percent of our customers are not renewing their subscription or are failing to become recurring revenue for us, right? They track churn, they track net revenue retention, they track customer health, right? They track lots of different scores there, and they build and maintain those systems for onboarding, for renewals, for expansion. And each team is optimizing for a different port of the revenue engine. But often, no one is actually accountable. No one is actually accountable for how the entire system performs end to end. Nobody is actually responsible for the financial performance of the go-to-market teams. That is the gap that RevOps is designed to close. And it's even misleading to call it a gap that it closes, because what it does more, it comes in from above and unifies all these teams, right? RevOps is the function that integrates marketing, sales, and customer success into a unified go-to-market system, right? RevOps aligns technology and data and process across all stages of that customer lifecycle, measuring performance not just at each handoff between each team, but across the entire journey. So instead of looking at lead volume and conversion rates and renewal percentages in isolation in each team and saying, is marketing doing its job or not? Right? That's not a RevOps question. RevOps looks at metrics like the ratio of customer lifetime value to customer acquisition costs, right? LTV to CAC. They look at funnel velocity. They look at full lifecycle attribution. And these systems are integrated, right? The reporting is centralized. The goals between the teams are aligned so that the success of one team is predictive of the success or indicative of the success of another team. So RevOps exists because leads without conversions are wasted time, money, and effort. And conversions in sales without retention are really expensive and really hard to get a company past 10 million ARR, annual recurring revenue. And retention without acquisition really just doesn't scale, right? So RevOps ensures that these functions work together and not against each other. Now, let's look at an objection to RevOps as a concept, right? Some people ask, isn't that just like a strong operations leadership, right? Isn't this just a COO coming in and doing what it does? Not exactly, right? Traditional ops roles are scoped by department. So RevOps is scoped by the revenue system itself. It takes on a grander set of responsibilities. It doesn't report to one stage. It spans all of the stages of every aspect of a business's functions that touch and contribute directly and indirectly to earnings. So here's a helpful metaphor, right? If marketing ops, sales ops, and success ops are instruments, RevOps is the composer. And in some way, you could say RevOps is also the composer and the conductor, right? It writes the score, it aligns the structure, it ensures everything functions as one, and then it makes sure that it all beats to the beat of it all plays to the beat of the same drum. Okay, I'm losing the music thread a little bit here, right? But here's but I talked in the beginning about this concept of AIR, right? AIR, this AIR framework. This is helpful for me. Again, a lot of what I'm passing on now is helpful because it took me a long time to understand what RevOps is, why it exists, all these things, right? So here's a simple framework. RevOps is AIR, okay? It's architecture, it's instrumentation, and it's also revenue ownership. Architecture, instrumentation, revenue ownership. So RevOps is architecture because RevOps designs the connected systems, how tools work together, how data moves across teams, how the customer journey is structured, right? You'll often see this in an artifact of like a flow chart, a BPMN diagram, an ERD diagram or something like that, right? Or even just a pseudocode diagram, right? Like a lucid chart, flow chart, or like a Miro board flow chart or something, right? So that RevOps is architecture because it designs the systems, right? My definition of RevOps, which I explained in another video, is RevOps designs and orchestrates the business processes that contribute to company earnings. That's my definition of RevOps, right? So RevOps is architecture. It's also instrumentation, right? RevOps defines how performance is measured. It defines attribution models. It defines stage definitions. It defines velocity tracking, cohort analysis, not just the reporting, but meaningful, actionable visibility that is framed correctly according to a philosophy of the specific revenue method of the company. And then finally, AI, architecture, instrumentation. Finally, RevOps is revenue ownership. Okay, RevOps is accountable to the number, right? It doesn't just support pipeline. It ensures the system consistently produces pipeline, conversion, and retention in balance, right? It closes that loop between GTM inputs and financial outcomes. So here's a practical example, right? RevOps is the team that resolves when marketing's lead source tagging doesn't match sales stage definitions. So there's a disjunct there. There's a misalignment, right? Because how marketing is measuring its success does not align with how sales measures its success. So the handoff is inclined to fumble, rather. So RevOps sees that philosophical hurdle that needs to be jumped and removes that hurdle and says, we're going to semantically align your conception of what success is so that you're both measuring success along the same axis in the same way. So when that handoff happens, you both know why you're winning, right? And that builds a sense of confidence in marketing and a sense of direction in marketing. And it also builds a sense of trust in marketing by the sales team, right? And likewise for success in sales, right? So companies that adopt RevOps, this is from a BCG report, grow 19% faster and are 15% more profitable than those that don't. That is not a coincidence, right? It's not a coincidence, right? If your company is managing its GTM functions in silos, RevOps is not a nice to have. It's new. It sounds like a buzzword, but revenue departments and RevOps as a philosophy is here to stay. And it's that layer of organizational function and philosophy that brings the system together. And if you're in RevOps and your work is about more than just process, then you know that you're judged based on a performance, right? You know you're judged based on that bottom line. Are we doing well as a company? It doesn't matter really what your job description says, because the primary responsibility of the CEO is to run a profitable company. And you are the youngest department and happen to be the only and first department that has been delegated the sole responsibility of owning that number for the CEO, right? This is the RevOps team is the delegated executive function of the executive team. And so that's why and yet it is one of the most informally and youngest defined departments in a company. And so yeah, that's why I'm curious to hear from all of you. What are your processes? What performance metrics are you judged on? How are you designing your business so that it runs well, right? If this helps to clarify your role at all, send it to your CEO. I'm very curious to hear the conversations that come off from this. Send it to your CRO if you're lucky enough to have one. Send it to your head of success. See what your sales teams, marketing teams, success teams, revenue teams, executive teams think about these concepts. Does your business work this way? If so, why? If not, why not? Right? And if you're already building RevOps, I want to see your playbook. Post your RevOps playbook. Post links to blogs you've written. I'm really hungry for information about this. I'm implementing it in my role and also in my consultancy and my agency, right? But I feel very often like I'm figuring out for myself. I'm using Jaco's book and lots of other great revenue sources to figure it out. But I think the RevOps community is still growing and there's a lot to be learned and there's a lot to be kind of codified still. So I'd love to hear your playbook in the comments, your biggest constraint, right, as a RevOps professional, and let's build a blueprint for RevOps together. All right, thanks for watching.